Our question at this time is one that perhaps seems very simple on the surface, but there is a lot of depth to it. We have a question before us asking simply, what is God's name? Now, if you think about it, you think, well, what would God's name be exactly? When you think about God, the Father, we think of our Creator. Genesis 1 and verse 1 just says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The English word, God, G-O-D, is there used. But even there, we find that, as you dig into that, we find so much that is for our use, and so much that, in fact, the Bible enlightens us as to God and as to who that He actually is. When we think about God, we see that His name, we see this description being given of Him in many ways. Oftentimes we use the word Jehovah. Jehovah just means eternal one. But even at that, there's more to it than just saying eternal, which that's plenty, isn't it? When we think about the descriptions given of God, we don't have a proper name, if you will, of God other than just to say God, or like we said, Jehovah, meaning eternal one. And yet at the same time, there are descriptions given throughout the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, that give us an idea of just who God is, and descriptions of His nature, His attributes, and so forth. For example, we think about Yahweh. We find that term being used, Jehovah Yahweh. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 4 speaks of God in that way, and it's Jehovah Yahweh. It means God is my salvation, or divine salvation. When we think about God, we see that attribute of Him, certainly. When we think of the God of heaven, there's no idol, there's no anything that's been made by man that can be so described as salvation, but God is that way, divine salvation, Jehovah Yahweh. Abraham in Genesis 22 and the verses number 14, there he is described as Jehovah Jireh, J-I-R-E-H, Jehovah Jireh, and that name means God is my provider. And so when I think about God, I see not only is He salvation, I see Him being a provider. Yes, provider in spiritual matters, certainly a provider in physical matters or in physical ways. And when we look into the book of Exodus, we find the word Jehovah Rapha, R-A-P-H-A. And that means God is my healer. And yes, He healed the wounds, didn't He? He healed the people. He healed the nation at that time. We find Him healing us spiritually, healing physically as well. And see, so when you think about what is God's name, the name of God implies so much more than just a moniker, just one description. But in fact, He is described in many ways as we look into the Scriptures. Exodus 17:15, Jehovah Nissi, N-I-S-S-I, means God is my banner. He is the banner. He is the healer. He is the provider. Yes, He is Jehovah Shalom. In Judges 6 and verse 24, speaks of Him as Jehovah Shalom. That means God is my peace. In other words, you're not going to have peace or enjoy peace, true peace, if it is not for God. He is the one who has provided. He is the one who gives in that way. At Psalm 23 and verse 1, we read in Psalm 23 verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd. Well, when you look into that statement, into that phrase, we see the original words were Jehovah Rohi, R-O-H-I. And it means what we think it means. It means shepherd. He is the shepherd. He is the one who leads His sheep, who leads His creation, who blesses them, who provides, as we've talked about already. And Psalm 23:1 describes some of those provisions. He provides, He heals, He is our salvation. All of that there described in God in Jehovah Rohi. Isaiah 6 and verse number 3 speaks about Jehovah Sabaoth. Now, not Sabbath, but Sabaoth. It means God of hosts, or the God of armies. And so just as God heals and protects and helps us in this way, so also He is the one who is the God of the armies, or God of hosts. And so when you think about what is the name of God, and what it means, and what is implied in this name, is much more than just saying the word God in it. Much more than saying that. You look into the New Testament, there we read about terms such as Father. All right? And we add to the list, don't we? Jehovah, Ezekiel 48 and verse 35 is Jehovah Shammah. God is present. And what comfort we find when we think about a God who is present. He is here. He is real. He is looking and caring for each and every one of us. And so those are just some of the descriptions we find relative to God. And so I hope that'll help you in that study, and hope that helps answer the question about the name of God.